Today I'm welcoming Bill Konigsberg to the podcast. Bill is an author of young adult novels. His first three, Out of the Pocket, Openly Straight, and The Porcupine of Truth, have each won major awards, which is something he thinks about mostly when he can't seem to write a sentence. In addition to writing, Bill's an assistant professor of practice at the Piper Center for Creative Writing at Arizona State University. Bill lives just outside Phoenix with his longtime partner Chuck, and they have two Australian Labradoodles who complete them. His latest novel, Honestly Ben, was released in March 2017. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you and to talk about Honestly Ben in particular, and probably some of your other works as we go along as well.
Sure.
So the spring release of Honestly Ben, for folks who don't know, continues the story of Ben and Rafe from your 2013 book, Openly Straight. Now, for listeners who may not be familiar, and all of them need to be, tell us kind of the arc of these books and what the story is about in total.
Sure. The Ben and Rafe saga began in Openly Straight, and Openly Straight is the story of Rafe Goldberg, who is a boy from Boulder, Colorado. He's an out gay boy. His situation is very good. He has very liberal parents. He lives in a very liberal place. He's out and comfortable. He's on the soccer team, no problem. But he's tired of being the gay kid and having that label follow him everywhere. So he basically he decides to go across the country to an all-boys boarding school where he's going to reinvent himself without the label gay. It's not that he's going to go in the closet. He's just going to not talk about it. And that's the premise of Openly Straight. But probably the thing that's most noteworthy or memorable for most readers about Openly Straight is the relationship he has with a boy he meets named Ben Carver. And Ben is a straight boy, and they become fast friends. And Rafe starts to have feelings for Ben, and the friendship deepens, and it's this bromance. And even for Ben, the bromance starts to become more than physical, more emotional. And so the two fall in love as only a quietly or secretly gay boy and a mostly straight boy can. And because Rafe hasn't talked about things to Ben, about what he's done, it blows up. And so that's how the book ends in a lot of ways, but the relationship ends not so happy. And a lot of my fans were really upset about the way that the romance ended. So I picked it up with Honestly Ben. I had never expected to go back into that relationship. Openly Straight is about so many other things, and to me it's about Rafe. But really, the fans wanted it and they got it. And the book picks up exactly where the relationship left off. And the difference is it's from Ben's point of view. And so we get the point of view of a boy who grew up on a farm in New Hampshire. He's a scholarship kid at this rich school. He doesn't feel like he fits in. And frankly, he's straight and confused because he's never had feelings for a boy before and suddenly has these strong feelings for Rafe. And the question is, where does that go? And it goes somewhere in the book. I don't want to give anything away, but then the book happens.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want to do spoilers. Was it just the fans that brought you back to the story, or did you as a writer feel that you had unfinished business with Ben?
The truth is that it was about 99.9% the fans. I mean, we all have favorite books of ours, and Openly Straight is certainly probably my favorite book or one of my two favorites of mine. I like that book and I stand by it. And I never thought, boy, I have to go back and I have unfinished business with Ben. I didn't even see it as an unhappy ending. I just figured things happen after that. But really the clamoring was loud. And, I had, just so you understand, when I started to hear from fans about wanting that, I just assumed the answer was no from the publishing house because I had wanted to write a sequel to Out of the Pocket. And Penguin, the publisher of that book, basically laughed at me. They're like, "No, thank you, we don't want that." So I assumed that nobody would want this, and when I mentioned it to my editor, I said, "Would you be interested in a book from Ben's point of view?" She just about jumped out of her chair, and she said, "Absolutely, please write that now." And so it wasn't really my choice, but it was a very interesting thing to write a sequel for a book that wasn't supposed to have a sequel.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And as a fan of Out of the Pocket, if you ever want to write that sequel, party of one right here that'll take it for sure.
Yeah, really. I wrote a book with another character where Bobby shows up in another character's story, and that book actually was supposed to be my second novel, but Penguin bought it. It wasn't a sequel, but it included another character, and then they canceled it. So.
Oh. Fingers crossed that'll see the light of day someday.
Someday.
Now, at the end of March, and hopefully talking about this, we're not going to verge too close into spoiler territory, but you did a blog post about a message you got from a reader discussing bisexuality and how it's not a label that Ben puts on himself really
Right.
throughout the whole book.
Right.
And of course, there's all this talk at least in the romance genre, of course, of gay for you, which is some people's not favorite trope.
Right.
Because of how that is essentially, by erasure at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But then it brings up, I think, the way certain young men can feel about, I've always thought I was a straight, but now I have this, and what does that mean? And I think it ties nicely into the whole story that bridges these two books about labels.
Right.
Where do you stand in all that, and how do you think this whole thing with the book kind of sorted out? Did you get more email about this as the book's been out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gotten the vast majority of the feedback that I've received on the book has been really positive, that people have really seemed to connect to the book, fall in love with Ben, believe that they are Ben, all that kind of stuff, and that's beautiful. I got that email about saying that I had engaged in bisexual erasure, and I am aware of, but not terribly familiar with, the fact that on Goodreads there are quite a few people who are upset with me, and I have a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts about this. I'll tell you in general what I think. I think that bisexual erasure is a thing. I think that I can understand a person's frustration with feeling erased. I think everybody wants to feel represented in literature. The thing that I don't fully understand is the need for books to be correct and have the correct answer. Ben, to me, has his own experience. Ben is a boy who believes that he is generally straight and labels himself that way, though he has feelings for another boy. He's not in denial. He's just experiencing things the way he experiences them. And the thing that I don't want to say I take offense to, I just disagree with, is the idea that Ben has to, kowtow to what somebody else wants him to label himself. In fact, that's what the book is about. Mm-hmm. The book is about different paths. And I will admit that I didn't understand what you were talking about this in the romance genre, about the issue of gay for you or whatever that is. I don't read that genre, so I was not familiar with that. So just like Ben, I thought I was creative. Just like Ben, and Ben has that experience. He didn't read that genre. He doesn't know the politics of that. So
right.
Is it okay?
And as a young man, even if he did read it, he may not know what to label himself. Right. And who is to say in the end that everyone's experience must be the same? I think I have one further thing that I'd like to say about this, and it has to do with the volume of what I'm seeing now when people
are upset online. I've seen it happen much worse to other authors and other people. I'm not complaining for me. I haven't had it yet. I'm sure at some point I will. I think we need to tamp down our anxiety and anger when it is based on something that there's a difference between a microaggression. Do we know that term? Do you understand what I mean by microaggression?
I'm going to say no.
Okay, good. I'll explain. So a microaggression would be like heterosexism is a microaggression. So I've talked about that in a lot of my books, where that's when homosexual people are basically erased because everyone assumes that everybody else is heterosexual. I've dealt with that my entire life. That is difficult and it is upsetting. However, it is not the same as a hate crime. And I get this sense that people get so angry about things that I feel like we're missing the forest for the trees sometimes, that like we should be talking about microaggressions. Microaggressions make other people feel bad. However, they don't kill people. They're not the same as violence. And I'll get in trouble for everything I'm saying here, but this is how I feel. I feel like we've gotten a little bit too sensitive, and bisexual erasure is a real thing, and it's something that we ought to be talking about. But calling me names and saying I'm the worst person in the world because of this feels extreme to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that as somebody who reads your work and reads romance and writes in romance. I think you created an honest character with Ben.
I hope so.
And I don't think bisexuality is erased there at all, because it's a 17 or 18-year-old boy going, I liked girls, I still do, I like Rafe. It's like, I don't know. And 5 years from now, he may call himself bi and be perfectly happy with it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a final answer. It's the answer at the end of a book when he's had an experience. And the thing that I'm decrying is this need for us to have the correct answer at all times, as if the purpose of art is, instead of to create real people in real situations, it is to educate people to the correct way of thinking. I really have a problem with that. Yeah. So,
and I think you phrased it really nicely right there with that last bit. It's like, yeah, that's what art's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's supposed to make people mad.
Maybe not always mad, but yeah, certainly at least wake up and have a different point of view.
It's exactly, yeah.
Now, you crafted Ben, I think, the way that so many teenagers are today, with all of this stuff just piled on top of him. He's got school and baseball. He's got this major speech to give that probably sets him up in a scholarship for college. He's got this thing with Rafe as well as a girl that he's been going out with. And like I told you before we started recording, I found myself getting very stressed for him. What do you hope that young men or young people in particular take away from this book as it may correlate to their reality?
I think the main thing that I want people to connect to from reading this book is the difference between what we want for ourselves and what other people want for us. I know that that's something that every teenager deals with, and there's never been a more stressful time to be a teenager. There is so much pressure, and the stuff that you and we're different ages even. So let's say I'm older than you. When I was a kid, it felt like college and getting into college was pressure filled. It's nothing like it is today, and it's so tense. We all get to make decisions for ourselves, and we all are individuals. And who our parents decide we are is just one thing. So I want people to be able to at least individuate between what others want for us and what we want for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
These days, whether it's parents or peers or guidance counselors or.
Oh yeah. And it becomes part of our identity. I mean, first of all, when we're teenagers, what our parents have thought of us and have made us, it feels like a big part of our identity. So it's hard to divorce that from our own identity.
Mm-hmm. What's the common thing that you hear from young people when you go and visit them, whether you're on a book tour somewhere or a couple of years ago, you also toured, I believe it was under the Trevor Project, perhaps.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Hmm.
What are you hearing from them about like what's in their life and what their struggles, are these days, whether it's straight teens or LGBT teens? That's a tongue twister.
Yeah. A lot of things. The first thing that comes to mind is that the among LGBTQ youth, the thing that is going on the most right now is about gender. It feels like that's the big issue, that for a lot of people now who are growing up, being gay isn't nearly what it was when I was coming out. First of all, everybody knows what gay is, and that wasn't the case when I was coming out, when I was growing up. Gender seems to be, I would say that transgender issues is sort of the same as what coming out as gay was 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So that seems to be the new frontier as far as I'm concerned, and especially about that gender fluidity. Mm-hmm. Everyone's talking about that, and it was interesting to learn about that. Beyond that, I mean, I think teens are teens, and I think that there are new pressures on them that those of us who are older don't understand, that come with living lives that are 24/7 online and social media. I feel really bad for people who are growing up now because, when we dealt with bullying when I was a kid, you go home and you get to escape from it. Now it just follows you around. So, I hear a lot about that. And I hear a lot of people who are connecting to YA books also. A lot of people are really glad that there are books that, such a variety of books, that they can find somebody in the book that they relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's why I like seeing the YA stuff just continue to grow and expand its readership. And, that books like Becky Albertalli's, Simon and the Homo Sapien Agenda is on its way to being a movie now.
I know.
Which is just tremendous.
That's awesome.
Now, shortly before Honestly Ben came out, you released this short story that kind of bridged the two books called Openly Honestly.
Right.
What was the idea to kind of build this nice little morsel to get everybody ready for Honestly Ben? Did that come from your editor, or was that from you as like, let's do this little thing in between, or?
It was really from my editor, but as soon as she said it, I loved the idea. I mean, I just thought it would be fun to go back in, and frankly, it's a long time since 2013. So, while my book, Openly Straight, has gained readership every year and people are still reading it as if it's new, there are a lot of people who are going to be reading, we're hoping to come back after 4 years. So to get people back into that world felt really important. And the point of the book, it's funny that I get reviews that show up about Openly Honestly, and people say, well, it was nice, but nothing happened. I'm like, yeah, that's what we intended. It's just sort of like a book that gives you a sense of these two characters who are going through parallel things over Christmas break between the two novels, trying to make sense of a relationship.
I don't know. I kind of, the extra thing I took away from it coming into Honestly Ben was that it was really the first time you got a up close look at Ben's home life. So you knew what he dealt with before you got into Honestly Ben when he was back at school.
Exactly. So that's right. That was new, which isn't a plot point. And I think that's sort of what I mean, is that people are like,
True.
We got these two characters, there's no plot. But yeah, so we had to go, and that was important to me. I actually had to go visit. Ben comes from Alton, New Hampshire, and I picked that when I was writing Openly Straight 6 years ago by looking at Google Maps. Like, I had no idea. Where is he from? I don't know. He's from Alton. Okay. So I had to go. I booked a flight and went out there and spent some time on a farm in Alton, because that's where he grew up, on a farm in Alton. So it was fun to kind of learn this new world and then to try to explore it from a character who lives there.
That's very cool that you went. I like that.
That was neat.
So tell us about the teaching that you do and what it's like to guide and teach other writers.
Well, it's fun. I teach in a program that is geared to helping people who want to write young adult books. I will let you know we're not advertising it anymore because after this year it's going to come to an end. So this program won't be around next year. But for the past 4 years, it's been around. It's a year-long program, and it's been wonderful because this process of learning how to write a novel is very, very exciting. It's very difficult to do, and to be able to be there to watch people go through the struggles and then be there for the breakthroughs has been a beautiful thing. I assume what I will do is make myself available for one-on-one mentorship by application with people who want to write in the future. I assume that's what I'll do next. Although who knows, maybe I'll teach somewhere else.
That's very exciting. What would you say your number one piece of advice or guidance is for people who want to dive into that genre as a writer? What's your free advice? One piece of advice for the audience, I guess, is the other way to put that.
Well, I mean, the basic free advice is that the hardest thing about writing a book is writing a book. And so the most important thing is that you sit down, you sit your butt in the chair, and you write. And when you get stuck, that you don't go back to the beginning. You keep moving forward. That the point of a first draft is to survive the first draft. Because once you have a complete manuscript, then you can figure out what it is. And so really just write, move forward, go.
Yep, I would absolutely agree with that. What inspires you to write the stories that you go after and decide to turn into books?
I think the most, David Levithan did such a beautiful job. He introduced me at an event last fall, and he said something that I hadn't thought of, but I so appreciated. And what he said is that, as an editor at Scholastic, they do some work they have to think about how to talk about an author and the books they write, and that I help them out by giving them index words in my titles. And so he pointed out and out of the pocket, openly and openly straight, truth and porcupine of truth, honestly and honestly Ben. And I really appreciate that, and it gave me some clarity. My books are about finding authenticity, and clearly my way of going into that is as a kid, as somebody who grew up gay in a straight world. Mm-hmm. And now the story is, how do I keep doing that in a world that's changed? Because gay kids are going through very different things than I did when I was growing up. So what other places do questions of authenticity come into their lives? Like in Ben, where he's trying to figure out, one of the issues I bring up in Honestly Ben is he hears about something called left-handed paths. And the idea is that most people in the world are on a right-handed path, which is conventional. You stay between the lines, you move forward. Other people, creative people sometimes, wind up on a left-handed path, which is one that isn't where society necessarily wants you, because society is more comfortable if people stay within their areas. Mm-hmm. So this is a book about what happens if you are on a left-handed path in life. How do you do that? How do you find your authenticity when the world would prefer you not to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good message overall to carry through. And I agree. I can see that kind of resonating through your various works, where finding that authenticity is the important key.
I think so, and I think as I've gotten older, that hasn't changed. It's like a lifetime job. How do you stay authentic in a world that is more comfortable if you just sort of don't express yourself all the time?
Yeah, everybody wants the easy label and the box and the thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a theme through story in my life.
What are you reading these days that you would recommend?
Oh, that means that I have to think about remembering the books I've just read. I just read a book by somebody named Stacey Lee called Outrun the Moon, that was actually about the San Francisco earthquake in 1906 from the point of view of a young Chinese woman. And it's that sounds a little heavy, and it is heavy, but it's also really fun and smart and interesting. I loved that book. I also really liked Michael Grant's book Frontlines, which is a revisionist history. It's basically about a what if. Like, what if girls fought combat in World War II? It's really interesting. So I'm reading, I mean, I read diverse stuff. I'm not in the box of reading anymore. I used to read every LGBT title, and now I'm sort of like, well, only if it comes to me. I don't preference them anymore. So
that's good. I think wide read for a writer is important.
I think so, and I think there are a lot of stories to be told. So I'm interested in reading about. I'm really interested right now in finding a good YA book that happens in another country, like taking a journey somewhere out of my zone would be cool. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm interested in these days. Different stuff.
What's coming up next for you? There's been Facebook posts about something called The Music of What Happens. Yeah. Can you tell us anything about that and what else might be in your future?
Sure. I'm working hard on the book, The Music of What Happens, which is basically the story of two teen boys in Mesa, Arizona, who meet while running a food truck one summer. And one of the boys, basically, if they can't make a certain amount of money in about a month, one of the boys is going to lose his home because of his mother. Long story. And it's basically that. It's a love story. And it's also about resilience and vulnerability, which is to say one of the characters is kind of a dude bro and openly gay and comfortable, but not comfortable with feelings. And the other boy is openly gay and does not feel confident about his ability to do almost anything. So he needs resilience. The other boy needs vulnerability. There's a novel.
Interesting.
Yeah, I hope it is.
Projected date, I'm guessing 2018 or 19, probably.
19. I think it's 19. I mean, I need to finish it first. So yeah, I'm 200 pages in, but it needs some work, needs some loving.
Yeah, I understand how that goes. That's exciting. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
And what's the best way to keep up with your work online?
You should, anybody who's interested should go to billkonigsberg.com. My website is a blog. You can subscribe so that you see any updates, any blog updates. So, that's where I'm best located. And Facebook, of course. I'm always on Facebook.
Cool. We will put a link to those places in the show notes, along with links to your books, and encourage people to go get them because they're all kinds of awesome. Perfect summer reading.
Yay!
Perfect summer reading.
Hope so.
Bill, thank you so much for joining us and hanging out for a little bit.
It was a pleasure.